Joining us now on 710 KURV, continuing the conversation. Obviously, this is something that's been dominating the conversation for the last week and a half or so and probably won't go away anytime soon. I have a lady who has known battlefields for quite some time, and now she's just here on the border and said she loved the tacos and the food, by the way. Former Washington Times and Washington Examiner reporter, now working with the Blaze. That's Glenn Beck's deal.
Mm-hmm. It's theblaze.com. Right?
Theblaze.com senior Washington correspondent. We have SARA CARTER. The reason why I want to talk to Sarah is because she put out an article. It says, government confirms authenticity of contract request for escort services for unaccompanied alien children at the border.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah, thanks a lot for joining us on 710 KURV.
It's great to be with you guys.
So this government procurement request, or whatever you want to call it, was discovered by the wonderfully named website Weasel Zippers.
Correct. Give credit where credit is due. Weasel Zippers. Weasel Zippers posted the RFI, and then I was asked to look into it, and I did, and it was confirmed by ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Barbara Gonzalez, who's the spokesperson there, responded to my request regarding this RFI, and she said that they did post it in January. I believe it was January 29th, when they posted this request for escorts for unaccompanied minors that would be crossing the border, a suspected 65,000.
What does that mean?
RFI is request for information. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a request for information. So they were looking for bids from different contractors. Yeah. And the one question they have not answered yet, but they did contact me yesterday to say that they would be getting back to me. And I keep thinking they're pushing me off, is who got those contracts? Who were the companies that got the contracts? I have a feeling I know who some of them are, but I do not want to disclose those names unless I have absolute proof. And
is it the one that Dick Cheney used to own part of?
Yeah, there's definitely people would recognize the names of who got these contracts. They are not like small mom and pop escort services.
Does the information you have give any guidance on what this contract would be worth, or how does this work? They just say, give us your best shot here and we'll pick amongst you. So in other words, it's not a low bid deal?
Yeah, that's right. They were looking for, according to Immigration and Customs Enforcement, they were looking for the most appropriate service that would be able to handle children, be able to move children. People would have to have background checks. They would have to be able to handle these children with care. I mean, because it was children, I think that there was a more heightened sense of concern among ICE officials regarding this. And that's understandable. I mean, you want to be able to...
You don't want a bunch of perverts in charge. I mean, to chuck it down to the cob. That's what they're... Well, I mean...
You said it.
They're a bunch of kids. You gotta have the people of the highest stature to do this.
That's right. You said it. I didn't. But you know what's interesting about this? And a lot of people have brought this up. I mean, it's something that is not that everyone's been kind of talking about. Why were they expecting 65,000 unaccompanied minors to cross the border in the first place?
Well, we did an interview. I keep coming back to this, and I wonder if I heard the guy right, although we haven't recorded. He was a former Border Patrol agent whose name escapes me now. He worked for UTEP, University of Texas, El Paso.
The professor in El Paso, yeah.
And they have a contract, I think, with the government, and he produced at their request, the government's request, a prediction on what's going to happen with Central American refugees. And he told them, I think at the end of last year, it was published in January, hey, there's a bunch of them coming.
And that's absolutely true.
And Houston
there were
Chronicle,
a number of reports done early last year and as well as late last year in October. I was privy to information that top officials with the DHS met in October, and they also met with personnel from Human Health Services as well, that they were expecting this flood of undocumented minors from Central America. But they had said that they mostly expected it to be young males, not what they had seen, which was an enormous amount of young women and children that were female crossing the border as well. I think that was a surprise to a lot of the intelligence people that had either worked on these reports or were privy to these reports.
And when?
And I think, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, when did this meeting, these meetings take place?
They were saying in October. In October, there were a number of meetings with DHS officials, and I'm actually giving that to you a little bit early because I'm still working on that story. And these meetings, they discussed the issue of these children. And according to some of my sources, the DHS officials, the administration officials, seemed more concerned as to whether or not there were going to be enough beds for these kids as to not stopping it. You know, they didn't have any plan in place to stop this flow before it started. And according to the people that I've been speaking with, there was just a lot more concern as to whether or not they would be able to accommodate all the children. And that kind of makes sense when you look at the at this request for information for contracts that Immigration and Customs Enforcement had put out.
What have you found out how the government knew that there was a flood coming, other than this one case that's the only one I'm aware of, the UTEP guy saying there's a bunch coming?
Yes, there was actually intelligence reports that were done by Immigration and Customs Enforcement as well as DHS. I was somewhat aware that Border Patrol takes a look at numbers, but these intelligence reports estimated that a number of young unaccompanied minors, particularly males, would be flooding into the United States as they started to see an increase in a real spike in gang affiliations and fighting and other extraordinary circumstances in Central America that they suspected and believed would cause this immigration flood into the United States. And this is something that analysts continue to look at in different parts of the world, not just Central America. But there was an enormous amount of concern about these particular studies because they were actually watching the increase take place last year, early in the year, and then throughout the year. So they really knew that something big was coming. I also spoke to several people that were privy to this that said they had seen, the cartels, the human traffickers, taking advantage of the administration's continuous, I guess, maybe the Dreamers Act and continuous push for immigration reform. So that was another issue that really played into the hand of this.
Well, the request specifically says is praying for 65,000. They got that number pretty accurate almost to what we're seeing the wave of immigrants come in, right?
Yes, well, and it's a lowballing it too.
That's going to be lowball, yeah.
Yeah, it's lowballing it as well because if you look at this year's expected numbers, they are expecting more than 90,000 unaccompanied minors this year alone. Over 150,000 next year.
What are these escorts supposed to do?
They were going to move minors from point A to point B. So every time, like in McAllen, when people cross the border and they end up at the McAllen Border Patrol Station or in Brownsville at the Brownsville Border Patrol Station holding facilities, then those transport services would either fly them from point A to point B to where they would be able to hold them in a more permanent facility, or drive them from point A to point B on a bus or a van, wherever there was space for these children to be held.
Is it odd for them
to have this many? So it's not necessarily 65,000 hirees, people hired. It's just people to take care of that many people.
Yeah, what they were looking at was 65,000 children on that request that needed to be moved. So they needed to find, and I'm sure they did, they needed to find companies that would be able to contract with the government and be able to move these children once they have them in facilities inside the United States. So they would move them directly from the Border Patrol Station to Lackland Airfield or to Fort Sill in Oklahoma.
So if they're getting a lot of the escorts, does that mean if they were able to understand that there's something going to come this way and they're preparing for that, why wouldn't they just put different funding into manpower to stop the flood?
That's the question, and that's the question that a lot of people, even those that were privy to this information, were really upset with. They believed that the government, and this is quote unquote, purposefully allowed this to happen because they were well aware that this was more than likely going to happen. I think at first there were some people that actually didn't believe that there was going to be this kind of enormous flood or surge of immigrants. And then later, as the numbers started going up, they started to believe the reports that were within the DHS, and nobody stopped it, according to the sources that I've spoken with. Now, I have reached out to the Department of Homeland Security. I have reached out to a number of different people, particularly Human Health Services that was involved in this. And I am still waiting to get a normal response from somebody that answers my questions. I had sent an email to Human Health Services spokesman Kenneth Wolf again yesterday asking a number of questions, and I get the same general answer back. The health and safety of the general public is our top priority. And, when children come to this program, we give them a well child exam and vaccinations against communicable diseases. It's like nobody wants to answer the actual question. So, I'm still putting it out there. I'm telling you what my sources are saying, what I'm hearing from the ground up, from people that were privy to these studies. And I think that it's important that people look into this and reveal the truth of why this happened, because there's a danger to us and a danger to those kids that are moving across Central America and Mexico trying to come into the United States.
So the question would be, let me stick in parenthetically, from what I can tell, and Kennedy knows because he's got a bunch of Border Patrol friends. The Border Patrol guys were not prepared for this. They weren't staffed up for it. Taken aback by it might be one way to put it. So the question would be to the people in the government, having this intelligence that there's people coming, why didn't you? Why does it appear you did not prepare? Explain why things were the way they were, and like these kids just showed up, and now what are we going to do? That kind of
that's perfect, Davis. That's it, because not only why weren't the people prepared to stop this or take measures, extraordinary, like they could have taken measures, is what I was told, to try to mitigate this and put the word out in Central America and contact government officials that, hey, look, you're misunderstanding this, that we don't have immigration reform yet. There isn't an amnesty. Put money into an ad that says, don't show up or you're going to go back home. And one major question that a lot of people are asking is, why didn't they notify the local communities? Why wasn't the McAllen local law enforcement officials notified? Why weren't people notified in Brownsville? Why weren't people notified in Arizona, New Mexico?
They're being awfully secretive. From what I can tell, it's real hard to get in. I'm not called Border Patrol, so I don't have firsthand knowledge, but you keep reading how hard it is to get.
It's very hard
to get information like how many people showed up, how many of them are families. They know 20% are unaccompanied minors. I read something this morning that, because I'm thinking they're little kids, because that's what Kennedy LaFave saw. But no, they said a lot of these are young males, as you were talking about, which is a little bit different complexioned than 6 and 7-year-old girls with mama. That's right, and it's a little and it's a different kind, because what you're looking at is 15 to 18-year-old males, and you can also be looking at 20-something year old males or men that look younger than their age, claiming to be young unaccompanied minors. You just don't have to have any documentation on you, right? You just cross the border, say I'm 17 years old, I came looking for my parents, I think this is their name, I have no place to go, I'm here, and where do they send you back? That's what's happening as well. So, I want to go to Disneyland.
I never looked at it that way. Yeah.
Why not? Why can't you ask to go to I want to be in Disneyland. That's where I want to go.
My tia's in Orlando, I think.
Well, if there is a holding facility at Disneyland, I'm sure that's got to be the number one go-to spot.
The weather's perfect.
It's on the top of Magic Kingdom's castle. That's where my cousins live.
I hear the weather is better in Southern California, but he says it in Spanish. Sarah Carter, I think we've run the time out on this, but we really appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate having an opportunity to talk to you. And thanks again for the great food in McAllen. It was wonderful.
I told you.
Sarah Carter, senior Washington correspondent for The Blaze. You're listening to 710 KURV.